Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's show. And this show is the Analysts Gone Wild, but for today, I guess we need to rename it to Birds Gone Wild because we have some bird sound in the background, but that we cannot figure out, where it is coming from. So hopefully...
It's my cicadas. I told them to be quiet, and they're not listening.
They are very uncooperative.
So much to authority.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they are telling you, John, when you talk about the story, talk about something that they can understand, I guess. Okay, so let's start with the intros. Robert is not going to be here, so this show is going to be on a drier side today. You will not have as much fun. We will not be talking about food and wine, and definitely not olive oil. Sometimes we might talk about, how to cook olive oil inside your ERP, but that's probably the max that you are going to get out of this show. So let's start with the intros. So John, do you want to go first?
Yeah, John Santaferraro here. I'm the host of the Digital Analyst podcast on InsightJam.com and the CEO of Ferraro Consulting, a marketing strategy consulting company along with industry analyst coverage for data and analytics.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being here, John. Thomas
Wieberneit, founder and principal analyst of CRM, not CEO. I'm not having enough coffee yet. Coincidentally, I have my own podcast too. It's called, unsurprisingly, CRM Convos. And, well, I'm dealing with all sorts of CRM-ish topics, CX, AI, with ERP being a side topic to it.
Okay, amazing. And guys, if you have not checked their podcast, please do. They are producing a lot of content. Obviously, the flavor is going to be slightly different because we all have our own sort of expertise and perspective. But definitely do listen to them. Ken, next.
Well, it seems like having a podcast is probably a prerequisite for participating, and I actually do have one as well.
Yeah, I kicked out some people from the show because of that.
My podcast is called Esoteric Curiosities, and I talk about anything and everything that I find interesting. Much of it has a technical focus, but that there you are. If you look at my LinkedIn profile, you'll see whenever I post episodes. So that's one thing, but I am a lead advisor here at Pretty Simple Group, and I focus on CIO and infrastructure and operations coverage.
Michael?
Sure. Michael Fawcett, and not surprisingly, the host of a podcast called Disambiguation, which is focused on trying to cut through the hype around AI so we can help business leaders be more successful. I'm also the co-host of a show called In the Hot Seat. That's a bi-weekly show that is mostly focused around digital experiences. And I'm the founder and CEO of Arion Research. We do advisory and consulting, particularly around the intersection of CX and AI, but I also do some work in ERP as well.
Not to forget that you are a regular guest in Analysts Gone Wild.
And I am, most importantly, I'm a regular guest in Analysts Gone Wild. That's right. and often I'm the substitute for Thomas.
That's true. Yeah. Although my beard is lacking.
It is. We're doing about the same on the other one, though.
Yeah.
Sam seems to be the odd man out here, so come on, get with the program.
Yeah, I probably need to shave. This is in my family. I mean, we have black hair until we turn maybe 80, 90. We don't age.
You're the odd one out.
We don't age in our family. So, all right, guys. So I think we have a call out here, for your podcast, and Leonard is being really kind. So maybe post your links. I think that's a great idea. Thank you so much, Leonard, for pointing that out. And I can almost guarantee that, Ellen, you have logged into a boring one. That is one thing that is definitely going to be guaranteed. If you want, slightly more interesting one, then probably you need to dial in next week with Robert. He's amazing. Okay. One more comment. Glad we are also chirpy today. Yeah. All right. So I'm gonna start with the first story. If you guys are ready. So here, I guess this story is coming from Sage, and unsurprisingly, this is about AI and Copilot. And I mean, Copilot, I don't know how you guys feel about it. I'm pretty sure you guys are gonna say, okay, who's talking about Copilot right now? That's the thing of the past, right? But these guys are, I mean, different. Number one, the Copilot is for Sage X3, which is the ERP system, from Sage, one of their bigger one, targeted primarily for mid-market, upper mid-market, lower enterprise, that kind of segment. And they seem to be focusing on sales, which is very different than what Sage generally focuses on. ERP systems in 90% of the cases don't necessarily have a real CRM. So this is very interesting that they have announced the Copilot and they are focusing on the sales side of things. So how do you guys feel about it, I guess?
Yeah, I will say when I read this, my first reaction was, oh yeah, okay, somebody else. But actually, I mean, and that's not a bad thing. Like Copilot's a useful tool. I'm not dissing that. But then I did read through the article, and there were a couple of things in there that I thought were actually kind of interesting. The sales intelligence piece of it, where really focused around risk mitigation, looking at at-risk customers, that sort of thing. I think that's very useful. And then I thought the anything that automates accounts payable is really great in my book. So.
Yeah. The probably most surprising part of it is that they are starting with sales processes where Sage all but abandoned their CRM product. So which is probably a bit sad, but that they put that on the sideline, but because it had the chance of enriching the competitiveness of the landscape a little. But hey, looks like they are reconsidering, or they are doing like SAP with its SD module, using that as a sales management part.
So Thomas, just to be aligned, so do you like their CRM product or you don't like their CRM product?
A while ago, I liked it. As they abandoned it, well, it fell way behind. So pretty much everybody I know is on the verge of jumping off it. That's why I'm a bit surprised that they are looking at these types of processes first, or doing an announcement of these types of processes.
So my understanding of that movement is that I think Sage sold it to Infor. Infor has that product, if my understanding is right. And I don't think they are as committed either, to be completely honest. And Sage actually changed their strategy because they sort of knew that CRM is probably not the market they want to get in. And 90% of their products now, the way Deltek approaches, to be completely honest, from the ERP perspective, is very, very, very tightly correlated with Salesforce. In fact, Sage actually owns the integration for a lot of these products, which is kind of rare, for an OEM to own the integration. There are some vendors such as Uniphore, Apicor. I mean, they all own integration, but not the platform-centric vendors such as your Sage, SAP. Their strategy is aligned towards, okay, how can we enable my partners to make more money? And they generally make through integration and IP and everything else.
I mean, X3 is their ERP product, but still it's quite interesting to see that they are starting with sales-related processes and not, more ERP type processes.
Yeah.
I got to jump in as the data analytics guy and say that, this is definitely a Me Too announcement and not news. And so when they're talking about, as a big deal, we now do conversational interaction with the data in plain English. It's like, okay, well, I think that was at least 2 years ago that everybody did that real-time operational alerts. Well, it doesn't take AI to actually do that. And again, in sales platforms, especially where they're trying to make this announcement, Okay, let's go back 10 years. Sales intelligence that anticipates risk. Oh boy, here we go. And a unified 360-degree view of just our stuff, right? It's like, okay, so that doesn't mean anything. So I'm not very impressed, I guess, is the nice way to say that this is a Me Too, and a Me Too too late. I don't know what's going on at this company.
Yeah.
Ken,
Usually I'm the one who's there to slam announcements.
Well, so I'm actually going to take a little bit of a different tack here. And I think that from a customer and end user perspective, I'm a fan of Copilots because, number one, I think that as we look at client organizations and the amount of both time and resources that tend to get invested in the average person that needs to consume technology, I'm not seeing a lot of investment being made. It's more like we put tools out and hope that somebody can actually use them. So to the extent that Copilots make it easier for people to start their journey into leveraging AI or whatever sort of enhanced user experience that they might have, I think those are good things. And even if this is not necessarily bleeding edge, if it is giving people an advantage and helping them start making a transition with whatever older technology they're currently using, I'm for it.
Yeah, one caveat there. It's all good as long as it's happening outside the application frame. If I need to log in there, then there isn't much of an added benefit.
Well, and indeed, that is when everybody has a Copilot to bring to the equation, that ends up being problematic for the customer. So, and Microsoft's Copilot is not exactly a great example of something that provides more of a seamless experience, but rather it's more of an aggregate. So, yeah, there are still some issues along with it. But if you're spending the majority of your day working in an app that's provided by, a vendor, and they don't have a Copilot, then you're going to fall back on, oh, I know keystrokes, I know the things I need to do in order to be able to do the thing. And if you're now extending it so that these folks can actually gain access to capability that they didn't have before, or making their job easier, more productive, those are good things.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ken, I think that's a really good point, that if you're an X3 customer and you get this is important to you, right? This does give you a lot of advantage. There is value in here. It's so if you look at it in the market overall, sure, but they have a lot of customers, a lot in the mid-size and small, and they're going to get good value out of this. So I think that's a great point.
All right, guys. So if you don't have any other comments, I think let's move to the next story. So here we have a Storyblok. So this is going to be slightly the real CRM, CMS side of the story, as opposed to ERP guys pretending that they know CRM, I guess. And that'll make some people happier here, I guess, in this room. So Storyblok, but I mean, I don't know how you guys are going to feel about this announcement. And maybe John is going to say, okay, the next one, what are we doing here? Figma integration, what's a big deal? But I don't know. I mean, and I don't know how many companies really use, to be completely honest, these integrations. I can see some value. Figma is a very recognized tool, and you are building your assets here, bringing to your CMS. I don't know if you're bringing the code as well. Sometimes that code could be all over the place. So I'm personally not a big fan of either machine generating code or pushing that code into my clean repository. Okay, I want to have some sort of guardrails when I look at that. So that would be my take on this story. What do you guys think?
Well, don't forget that a lot of this is content, right? So you're working in Figma to design content. You're pushing that out so it can be used. So I mean, some of that seems like that makes a lot of sense from a CMS perspective. And Figma's a good tool, and it's very diverse, right? It does a lot of things.
So my understanding of that workflow, and Michael, correct me if I'm off here, there used to be a dedicated system called DAM. digital asset manager, right?
asset
So I don't know if
management.
Figma is going to play that role. I don't think it has the security workflow and the sort of approval process. And there's a lot that goes inside the dam, right?
Yeah, but I think this is the design tool itself, right? So this is the actual work being pushed into a repository to be reused in other use cases. So that, to me, that seems like a useful integration.
Yeah, it appears to be about building the specific CMS out,
right?
And building a front end to it, because Storyblok is headless. It doesn't have a UI. So, and with Figma, you design the UI. In GitHub, you contain the code, and well, it's straightforward to combine with two of the leading tools that web developers at the end use.
Yeah, I agree with you guys.
The next step is using the GitHub Autopilot to build the CMS, the front end.
Yeah, Thomas, I agree, because having been a chief marketing officer, Figma right now has somewhere between 30 and 40% market share as a design tool. It has taken off. So that is a huge opportunity, especially for Storyblok customers.
Yeah.
And Ken, I appreciate your point that I'm oftentimes looking at an announcement from an industry perspective, and how is there anything new about that when there's not? But for the customer base of that vendor, yes, this is new, and it helps them create more value, work faster. So I think this is a really positive step forward. I don't know enough. Maybe you guys know about this. Has everybody done this with Figma? I don't follow this particular area, content management, that much, but it seems like something you have to do if you're a CMS platform.
Things have been moving that way. They just had a conference, a user conference, like a month ago, I guess, or something. And they made a lot of announcements around that, a lot of partner announcements, a lot of integration. So, it seems logical to me, and you're right, they have huge market share. So that them and as Leonard points out in the comments, Canva's also catching up, but they're both very popular design tools right now.
And if you want to design something and don't want to shell out the bugs for Adobe, then Figma is a very good way. To look at. And that was the very reason why Adobe wanted it. They were scared, shitless, that they are taking the lunch.
Yeah, and that would be a fun transition, I guess, going to Adobe, I guess, because they are known for user experience. And Adobe, obviously their user experience is great as well, but not designed for laymen, I guess. Figma is designed for laymen, so that's a real difference between Figma and Canva and Adobe. Sorry, John, go.
This is like breaking news, right? And I completely missed this preparing for today's podcast, that 2 days ago Figma filed for IPO 2 years after $20 billion Adobe buyout fell through. So wow. And so there, Figma is in the news, and so it's probably really good timing for Storyblok to have this in the news.
Yeah, this is great. Hopefully we get our cut as well here.
Yeah.
Well, it's also interesting to note that, like, from an Adobe perspective, so they've actually stopped work on their UI design product. So, that's not something that they're actively investing in. They're investing in other parts of Creative Suite for people to be able to use. I think that as we start to consider the not just pure content, but with interface design and the amount of both continued DevOps activity as well as the democratization of development, getting people into the development process that have not been traditional participants, being able to integrate this at the level of GitHub, where you're pulling your assets in, I think that customers are going to start to see a lot more opportunity to be able to synchronize changes, because it's one thing for a designer to go through and do a layout. And if you're not checking that in so that whoever your development partner is can actually see the change and know what's currently, this is the state of the interface or whatever thing that you're working on, and then come along at the last minute and provide, oh, here's an update. Well, that really breaks your flow. And I think that things like this that make it easier for people to do their portion of it and have everybody put it into that single source of truth that people can be working from as part of the build process, that this is a good thing.
Yeah, so very interesting. And Thomas, I think you had one comment related to headless, and I found that very interesting. And the reason for that is because in the age of AI, I guess pretty much everything is headless. Okay, and I don't know if headless is headless.
Or has multiple heads, becomes like the Hydra.
Is that heady? Extra heady?
Yeah. But you got a point there, Sam. So the same functionality will be provided via different channels, and they may or may not look the same.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine the website being the web chat.
Yeah.
Might happen. Not that it will happen anytime very soon, because we are sort of not only text-based creatures. Graphics say sometimes a lot more than a novel, or you need a novel to express the same that a graphics can express. So there will be, based upon the used channel, different variations of UIs.
Yeah.
And that's why totally headless is, well, it's not everything headless. Let's put it like that.
Yeah, but the AI interaction is very interactive in my personal experience. So I know that you are probably not going to get the same interaction feeling as you are going to get through a website. But I mean, it can provide you the results, a widget, where you have a bunch of images or products. I mean, far richer experience. I mean, it just works, I guess.
Still, the presentation of the information will be different, whether you are having an iMessage or a full-fledged web front end.
Yeah. I'm curious what you guys think, because I'm seeing sort of this integration between the world of CMS and ECM, right? Enterprise content management looks at managing a full set of documents for an entire enterprise, and it's a bigger area, but it does a lot of what CMS does. CMS as a content management system is nowhere near enterprise content management, right? And document management and the things that can be done with that. But as AI comes into the picture, I wonder if it will unify ECM, and companies like Storyblok will be acquired by some of the, there's a lot of these companies that have done ECM for years are remaking themselves. Companies like Highland, OpenText, IBM, Oracle have these document management systems that they've acquired. Anyway, do you guys, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, the whole shift in content right now, the big news is using AI to personalize, right? So individualized, or at least tiny segment, personalized content delivery using real-time data. So that's going to change that whole market, I think. And some, I think you're right, there's going to be a lot of consolidation, but you're also going to see a lot of new capabilities that come out that are going to be very attractive to marketers, I think.
Yeah, and John,
similar discussion with Nicole France the other day. She was with Contentful. Well, I had one more.
Nice.
We are not only doing the hot seat together.
I know.
So in summary, so paraphrasing a little, so yes, there will be a conversion, and that probably also will include knowledge management, KBs. So because the specialization that we have seen, web content management, enterprise content management, knowledge-based systems, is no more really necessary. This is now my interpretation on top of the paraphrasing.
Yeah, and John, I think I am going to probably have a different take on this one based on my experience. And in my mind, when I look at these different tools, web content management, enterprise, content management, they have different use cases. They have different workflows, target very different industries. And these industries have very, very, very different purposes for them. For example, let's say if you look at the pure play CMS and the content management, this is going to be very marketing centric. It's going to be very web front where your consumers are sort of interacting with you. That use case could also be applicable for your enterprise content management, but there you have to worry about regulations, compliance, who's accessing your content. And generally those workflows are probably going to be overkill for something like this, because again, this is ease of use. So so two different use cases, and that's why you have two different vendors. You have some consolidation there, but for the most part, the web content management and the enterprise content management, these are two different categories. Sometimes they might merge as well in some industries where they have both of these use cases, but again, depending upon the industry, I would say.
I think that the tie into the knowledge management point should not be lost here, because whether you're talking about ECM or straight content management, now the whole point is being able to make something accessible to the audience that needs it.
Right.
And if you squint a little bit, then you're going to move into the adjacent area, right? So I think the thing that we really need to start thinking about is not necessarily a distinction between the tool, but where are we investing our time and effort in being able to capture the content that needs to get repurposed or delivered to the right person at the right time, ensure that it's accurate, ensure that it's valid and timely, so that whatever your goal is for the user community that you're supporting, we're able to actually support those things.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And the whole, the whole change that AI brings to the use of whatever the underlying tool is, right? If you look at enterprise applications, we know that in some cases that's already started to drift back, and the front end is a collaboration tool that uses AI or something like that. But I think in content, and don't forget, it's not just marketing content, but you need personalized content and service as well. So it covers, a broader part of the business, and perhaps what happens is these new AI tools that ingest real-time data, use that data to do this personalization, sits on top of some of these systems, and maybe it doesn't matter if it's enterprise content or if it's marketing content or whatever, right? Because you just need to be able to get to the source to personalize it, to deliver it. So
yeah, so we have some very interesting comments in the audience, and Leonard is saying that everybody's trying to get ahead, or they are feeling that they are trying to get ahead, but they are actually going behind. And this comment is very interesting as well, because consolidation is more of I would say the deal size increase play. I don't know if that's the right framing. But everybody's trying to increase the deal size, and that's why they are incentivized to consolidate these platforms. But one thing that they miss is the more you are going to consolidate, the thicker your deal is going to be, much harder to penetrate. So you don't necessarily get ahead, is the point that I'm trying to make. I don't know if you guys have anything else on that.
I think of it as not consolidation anymore. That in a lot of ways to me is legacy. It's really the unification of things where that makes sense. And what I've seen in the data space, and I think this will creep into the application space as well, is that there are a couple of vendors that have unified everything when it comes to data management, data engineering. And then because it's cloud-based, you basically pay for what you use. So it's all available, and you grow based on what matters most to your business. And even though you have what used to be considered a gigantic monolithic platform, you only use what you need and pay for what you use. And that model is an opportunity, because remember, the more unified the application platform and the data platform, the more capabilities that you have to run AI on top of that or within that, without having to consolidate everything just to get to be able to use the AI. So I think there is a trend towards unification that is valuable for the industry.
Yeah. I just thought Leonard was making a joke about headless, but that's just me.
Well, and to build on John's point, I think that as we start thinking about yes, there is some economy of scale in bringing components together, and there is some value in actually getting customer bases together because of natural adjacencies that the vendors are looking for. But I think that the thing that might not necessarily get overlooked might get overlooked, is the integration work required in order to provide a more seamless experience. And I think in the short term, vendors can use AI technology to actually mask the complexity that sits underneath it. But at some point, they're going to have to come really and account for the cost of what it actually takes to provide that unified infrastructure to be able to make those capabilities available, and then really use the AI technology as a way of identifying unique ways of being able to make those capabilities available to the end user community.
Yeah, I mean, if the AI sits more and more sits at the front of whatever you're trying to do, and you're having conversational interactions with your applications, I think that's going to be one of those decision points that says, is it cheaper to keep this or replace this? Because it's not really going to be, there's not going to be a lot of motion towards, oh, the upgrade gives me all this new capability, when most of that capability is coming out of the AI that sits on top. So I think that is an interesting point, though. It depends on the company and the economics of it.
On top of that, it's kind of increasingly becoming kind of a myriad, because with this unification, it's a platform game, right? So you don't want to have a zoological garden of platforms in your house, and this means that sooner or later you will reduce the number of those platforms, and at that time you better have a very good relationship with the vendors of the few platforms that are remaining, because else, right? So and AI accelerates that. Simple as.
Yeah.
John, you had a comment, I guess.
No. My only other thing was that I'm thinking that we should probably invite Leonard Goff to be a part of our.
Yeah, we should.
Yes.
Well, then the interaction.
He's definitely a great support for the conversation.
Yeah. So we have one more very detailed comment on that. I mean, he's kind of participating, even though he's not here. So he's saying, at my company, we use Canva, Figma, and Adobe, and your company is really big. So obviously, you are going to use pretty much everything. Canva is the one that offers the most ease of use, and it is also the most widely used. So it has become the default program for graphics. Only a few people use Figma, just the programmers, and fewer still use Adobe. And I'm a Photoshop, Lightroom fanboy. Yeah, I mean, different audience, I would say. I don't think, and I think you have pointed that out as well. Canva is going to have more application just because they are targeting business users. Figma is really for designers. They like Canva, but they are not replaceable, I guess. They have different use cases.
Well, they've started to move towards that, though. So Figma is expanding their footprint out to compete with Canva and compete with Adobe. But I think this is not an uncommon story, right? Figma for UIs, Photoshop. Adobe. There are things that it does well, and people still do that. But then Canva is your design tool for a lot of the things that you want to democratize. Honestly, I use Canva. I think it's great. It simplifies an awful lot of design work that I probably would have had to pay somebody for in the past. So
yeah, great points, guys. So let's keep moving, I guess, on the next story. Okay, what's going on here? Okay, I need to remove the comment. All right, so let's go to the next story. Okay, so next story is slightly different, I guess. Here we have Workday, which is, I don't know whether you guys are going to relate this with ERP or ECM, however you want to position. But this story is very interesting because these guys are, launching the agent partner network. And I think we have heard these stories from many companies.
Yes.
And if you are not on this bus, I think you are definitely behind. The way I see this as, to be completely honest, I think it's almost going to be a marketplace or the app ecosystem. The agent partner network is going to have very similar feel, very similar, line of attack, I guess, from the market penetration perspective. So obviously, the majority of the SaaS companies and the platform-centric companies are probably going to do this. I don't know about the best of breed, not best of breed. What is that? The purpose-built vendors, I guess. They are probably not going to do as much because of the strategy alignment, I guess. So that would be my take on this, Michael.
I mean, it's a little me too. I mean, but it's not a bad thing, right? I mean, Agent Exchange was announced a few months ago, and that's a marketplace for agents. You see a lot, Zoho and others that'll have these different agent ecosystems. I think the point, if you start to think about that like a digital workforce, then it just makes sense that there has to be a place where you could either build it or you could just go get it and hire it, per se. So I think those marketplaces are going to play a big part of that, because it'll help companies quickly get an agent that's, maybe 80-90% there, and they only have to customize that last bit. So
yeah, I think it's a really positive step forward, because most of the governance that I've been hearing about when it comes to AI agents and agentic AI focuses on data and access to data and security of data, because that's the world that a lot of the agentic is coming from. But in reality, an AI agent operates like a human, and somebody's got to be responsible for what that agent does, like they're responsible for a human within their organization. So it's an element of agentic AI governance that has to happen. And where better for that to come from than companies like Workday that are used to managing human workforces? Because there will be very similar kinds of controls put in place, the same way you restrict what an employee has access to, what an employee can do, what they have authority to do financially, in all those ways. All of that has to go back and apply to the agents. That said, what Workday doesn't have is what I think that are necessary for an agent orchestration platform. It has to have a data layer. Workday, I would say, has that, but weak. It's got to have an analytic layer. Workday has some of that, but weak. It has to have an application layer. It has to have a semantic layer. Workday has both of those, and then it has to have that agent orchestration piece. But I love the fact that they're bringing to light this idea of dealing with AI agents in the same way that you have to govern humans in an organization. That's a powerful concept.
Yeah, I think if you think about it like a workforce management system for agents, that's something we're going to have, right? And that's what their agent system of record is supposed to do. And you're seeing that more. I mean, Agentforce, Salesforce just announced this last week that they also have a way to coordinate agents, and that's more and more that's going to be the issue, right? Because you're going to need multi-agent systems to accomplish a lot of this automation. It means they got to work together. There's got to be a way to manage that. And also, if you think of it as a workforce, how do you set goals for these agents? How do you make sure they're doing the right thing? How do you do reviews of the agent performance? So all those things are things that we're going to have to think about when we start to think about a digital workforce.
Without humanizing digital agents too much here. So, I mean, this was pretty much the same as we had in old-style workflow systems. They worked on authorizations as well. This is what we technically are talking about here. It's authorizations. When a Benioff talks about performance management of digital agents, I cringe. So, because, I mean, what happens here? So what happens is another type of automation. Not more, not less. And this is governed by access rights, which we had before, and it needs to be measured whether they perform to their job or not. So you need a kind of a command center. And whether you put this up front or not, because it's hype topic right now, they are the new workforce. SAP does the same, just they don't talk about it that much in our faces. They are more about resolution of jobs. And this is probably pretty much the same in the X3 announcement that we had a little earlier. So this to me is hype. Basically, it's the same old wine in a new bottle.
So,
That's probably
John,
a bit more powerful than old-style rule-based automation.
So, John, to your point, I guess, overall from the legal accountability perspective, I don't think Workday is going to be responsible for the partner-owned agents. Yes, there are going to be some regulations the way you have it in your app marketplace or whatever, certification, okay, you can publish or not publish, or you are approved, not approved, whatever. But for the most part, I mean, somebody owns the code, right? So a partner owns the code. They are responsible for that. They own that data as well. They might be able to access Workday data, but once it crosses the boundary, then that becomes partner's responsibility. So there's a little bit of legal handshake there. Just to be clear, I don't think Workday is going to be responsible for the code base that partners are going to develop.
Yeah, but take this out to the customer, take this out to the end user, because that's the part that we're talking about here. How do you manage those agents? How do you make sure that they're in compliance? How do you do governance? How do you evaluate them? How do you make sure they perform correctly? All those things. And what happens when they don't? How do you want them to fail? Do you want them to fail safe? Do you want them to fail forward? All these questions have to be managed and answered. And honestly, if an agent fails, who's responsible for it? The developer or the manager or both or somebody else? I don't know. But all these things are questions that companies are going to have to answer. And that's why ASOR was, one of the interesting announcements they made earlier this year. That's why, Agentforce just added, similar capability to manage agents. And you're going to see that, digital workforce management type solution more and more.
Yeah. So, and that would be a problem. Let's say if you have just one agent, one vendor, you are dealing with one legal contract. But in this case, it is going to be similar to using like 100 plugins on WordPress. So now you are dealing with 100 different legal contracts, 100 different vendors, and you are going to feel as if you are getting thrown from one department to the next, just like, with government. So that's how probably the experience is going to be for the end customer, depending upon how many agents you are using and how many vendors are involved in the equation.
Sam, I want to respond because I think that with an agent system of record and the way that they're describing it anyway, they certainly have the potential to be able to at least monitor and govern. I mean, legal responsibility is very different than monitoring, governing, and they have to be able to do that as with their HR system, like you would a person.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Right. Because those if you remember, true agency means they're going to act, they're going to do something on behalf of the organization. And it's the same with contractors. When a company contracts with somebody, there's some, they don't take legal responsibility, but when that person begins to act as an agent for the company in certain ways, they have to figure out how to govern, restrict it. I think that agent system of record they have to figure out how to govern those agents.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Yeah.
The thing I find that's interesting about this is that from a purely mechanical perspective, I think that this offers Workday the opportunity to provide more capability without necessarily having to divert organic resources to actually building that as part of Workday proper. They can count on their partners to do that. And I think that there's enough digital UI friction inside of the product itself that if it can actually help them use some of those resources to address some of the core issues around usability, I think that would be a really great thing. So maybe they can actually advance both of these initiatives at the same time.
Yeah, so sounds like, John, you have a lot of support in the room. I mean, nobody has ever agreed with me, I guess. You seem to have some agreement here.
Actually, Sam, I agree with that statement.
Yeah, just wanted to say the same. Until now.
My answer, Sam, is just it depends.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so we have one more comment here. They need to keep tight control of third-party agents or those built by them. Yeah, that's going to be a gatekeeping process. It would be a PR nightmare. PR, obviously, that's probably going to be the next. Once you have the nightmare.
Yeah, it's
Or
probably
probably
not
you can,
only a PR
the thing
nightmare
is,
in that case.
yeah, but the thing is, like, we're thinking about this like just a software program, and that's not how you have to think about this.
yeah,
A digital agent is an employee that does action for your company, and it's the same thing. If you had an employee that went rogue and did something wrong, where's the legal responsibility? Now, I'm not saying that there might not be some eventual responsibility to the original person that wrote the code, but that's a long chain, and there's a lot of other things we have to think about. It's much more complex than I'm just deploying another accounts payable system.
yeah. Could not agree more.
But it's then as simple as deploying another set of automations. It's pretty much the same. If the automation acts on your behalf too, this is an automation. The automation goes haywire, then first of all, the company that uses this automation, deploys this automation, is on the line. And they have a responsibility and a legal accountability to whoever they did that to. Then there's the other accountability to the vendor, from which I bought this piece of software. So these are two different things. The outcome is pretty much the same. So, and the concepts are pretty much the same. So I'm so far pretty opposing the notion that these things are humans.
I don't agree, Thomas. I think that's a mistake. If a company doesn't think about it in that more complex way and approach it from that perspective, I think they will get themselves in trouble, because it's absolutely not the same as just deploying another software system, and it's beyond automation, because again, you're talking about something that could have agency and actually do things for you with your customer, and you'd be getting that information after the fact. So it's very complex, and it is something that we're going to have to deal with as more and more of these are deployed. And remember, a lot of times this is going to be a platform that the end user bought, that then their own people develop these agents out of that platform and deploy them. So it's not as simple as, oh, that's bad code. It might be bad code, but is that the problem, or was it an agent to agent interaction that caused the problem, or an agent to human interaction that caused the problem? This is much more complex than we have dealt with in the past with just software.
The analysis is more complex, yes.
And the liability is much more complex too.
Yeah. The liability is pretty much the same.
I don't agree.
Depending on the use case, but that will be a de-hyping of the discussion.
Yeah, we need to have another show just for that, I guess, discussion.
Probably.
And then Mike and I can use the gloves. Pull them off.
Pull them off, that's it.
Yeah, that'll be a real Analysts Gone Wild.
Analysts Gone Crazy. Maybe we have to change the words.
We might do it like Zuck and Musk.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Call it off at the last moment.
All right, guys. So we can probably cover one or two more stories. I don't know. Probably just one. Okay. So this is very interesting as well. This is coming from marketing world, advertising for the most part. So AI advertising, and I don't know, I mean, how this world is going to change, to be completely honest. My impression would be that this is probably going to experience substantial changes too. I don't think we have seen a real substantive announcements or the arguments or the offerings where customers are seeing real impact so far. But right now, I mean, nobody's investing in advertising, I guess, in this economy. So that could be the reason why that's not happening. So they are saying AI-powered B2B advertising solution. And I mean, I don't have a lot of meat here. So it's saying identifies and prioritizes your ideal customer accounts. I mean, in my mind, I would see a lot more value if the targeting and the conversion is going to be far more precise, which is the challenge, especially in the B2B space, talking about our own business. I mean, ads never work, like literally never work. And you don't even know why they are not working. So, so that's my personal challenge. So I don't know if AI is going to solve anything there. What do you guys think?
I mean, it's one of those things that, I admit, I don't really follow advertising space that much, but from the tech perspective and an AI perspective, it does make sense that you pull all these different data sources together and have something that can automate your campaign in a way that's much more targeted towards whatever segment you're going for. So I don't know. I mean, I look at it, I went, yeah, okay, that makes sense to me, and I didn't go much deeper than that.
Yeah, I actually like it because they're it seems to me like they're moving from a model of account-based marketing, which is a very big market, to account-based experience.
Yep.
And they really are automating things in terms of, number one, get the data in, right? Activate. Number two, understand that particular account. Number three, start automating. Number four, it's like you have the analytics. So if they can actually leverage this to move forward and move from account-based marketing to account-based experience, and use this around, customer journey, this is a very powerful tool. Yeah. I read, I guess I have to believe their statistics. It sounds like they've already got a large customer base. And number two, the 70% of companies are using account-based marketing already. So this is a growing industry. I think it only started to appear on the scene. I'm not an expert, but it seems like, maybe seven or 8 years ago, it were the beginnings of account-based marketing, but in CRM systems. Mm-hmm. But now this is like full on account-based marketing, account-based experience. I think it's powerful.
Yeah, it is. Account-based marketing is a thing. B2B marketing is hardly enough. So, if I get this under this one right, this speeds up or makes, let's say, account-based marketing far more dynamic. It makes it, basically allows real-time creation of real-time presentation of the content that you get presented at any time, based on the many lists that are, based on the many data sets that they are using. So it would be interesting to see this in action, really. But else, what I'm also interested in is the scale on the hype meter.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I do think you're right that personalization across everything, right? So I mean, this is where this area is going, and B2B or B2C, that individualization and personalization is going to be a big and important factor from an automation perspective.
Yeah.
I think that looking at the analyzing massive data sets is an interesting phrase to include into this, because are we just talking about the information that AdDaptive has at their disposal as part of what their products are, or are we talking about, in the average organization that may have 2, 3, maybe more products available to them? Are we talking about gaining access to that data as well and applying the tool set to that? Because certainly I can't think of an organization I have one thing and I'm just going to use that one thing. No, they're going to use a variety of products. And how are we talking about gaining access to all of that to really do the kind of analysis they're talking about?
I mean, that probably is a missing piece in this whole announcement, and I guess we could dig deeper into that and maybe find that out. But that is a good point. How do they get all the data consolidated to actually be able to do this? Because it's going to be scattered across a whole lot of systems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't work without the data, so they can't. Yeah, they have that first segment that they call activate, right? The adaptive activate. And if you don't have data, you have nothing to activate. So it is dependent on that.
Yeah. But the second piece is a bit in the formulation. So if you're looking at the second from the bottom, allowing you to personalize and optimize, the real value is in automating that, having that directly as part of the system and not telling me what to do in another system. because then, yes, it might be more precise, but the whole, let's say, real-time aspect that is necessary, even in B2B ABM, or especially in B2B ABM, is, well, reduced.
So, Thomas, you were referring to the slide, or do you want to talk about that? What you were talking
No,
about?
I'm talking about the second bullet from the bottom. By analyzing, yada, 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 identifies, prioritize, yada, 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 allowing you to personalize and optimize. So that would be a part of the functionality that I hope is ingrained, and not just telling me, okay, this is what you need to do to perform better.
Okay, perfect, guys. So I think we have some comments here, so let's cover them, and I think we need to close. We are close to our time, and I don't know if anybody has any sort of meetings to go to. We want to make sure that we are able to finish on time. So here, Leonard is saying that 6th Sense is a huge player in this, offering similar services, which I think similar technology. So I would say initially I was thinking that they had probably broader scope, AdDaptive, but it does seem like similar, overall. I don't know if you guys have any short comments.
No?
No, not really.
Not knowing 6th Sense, of course they are not alone. I mean, AdDaptive. ABM is a thing, a big thing.
Yeah. And John, something is going on, man. I mean, you need to teach us how to be on a roll.
Nice.
Good job, guys. All right, so I think we can take the closing comments now. So I don't know. Let's start this way now. Michael, do you want to go first?
Sure. Well, I think we talked a lot about a lot of different types of systems, AI-based systems today, and that seems to be the case every week now. Maybe we should just change the name to Analysts Gone Wild about AI. I'm just saying. But no, I think this idea of the digital workforce is really important, and I've been playing around a lot with this in the research, and I think from a user perspective, if you start to think about that more as if you're building this out, and there'll be different use cases where it's valuable, there'll be use cases where it's not yet, all those different things, it's important. But if you think of it this way and approach it that way, it changes the way you lay out all the systems and organization and management, governance, compliance, all those things. So I think that's a really important point for end users to understand.
So, Mike, we need to stick to the theme, I guess, and it's going to be, Analysts Gone AI Wild.
I like it. AI Wild, yeah. AIA.
So the one thing I would like people to think about, and basically just take a little morning coffee time. Don't spend a lot of time on it, but consider the interaction model that are available with the current state of technology, and do a little bit of forward thinking about where things are going to go in the future. And specifically, if we remove a browser, or if there is a new way of interacting with the underlying technology, what's the impact on that? Even just again, morning coffee time, 5, 10, maybe even 15 minutes. That could actually provide some important context for not necessarily the thing you're going to buy today, but how to hold it so that as you move forward, you have a little bit more of a thoughtful context in which to consider what you're purchasing and how long it might actually be relevant in your enterprise.
Sound advice.
Yeah, I'd say go back to the customer centric, right? The best way to figure out if AI is working for you is to determine if it's valuable for the customer. And so so get out of the hype and figure out what matters to the people that are using your software. That's where the value is going to be.
Yeah, Thomas?
Adding on to that even stronger. So the success of a business is not measured by its revenue or profitability, or it's not, the objective is not revenue profitability. This is a result. It's the result of doing right to the customer. So if you make your customer successful, you'll be successful. This is the core thinking that probably becomes more necessary to have, or else you are investing into pieces of software that make your vendor successful.
Yeah, amazing guys.
Because he thinks the same way, or she.
Yeah, thanks, Thomas. And I don't know, in closing, I guess, whether we were grumpy or chirpy, but our goal is always to keep things exciting here. So I'll see you next week. I mean, this was Analysts Gone Wild, and we meet every Thursday. Thank you so much, everybody.
See ya.
Thanks, everyone.